Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Welcome to conservative land. Yes, welcome to your on your own stand. Look at what's going on down in Jackson, Mississippi right now as, 160,000 residents without drinking water. Major infrastructure fail. Yes, they've got some flooding going on, but not unpredictable. Again, stuff that we've known is going to happen, stuff we should have been preparing for, and, haven't. And what I find interesting, and this is, again, this weird kind of moment where you go, if I were a conservative, if I were a right-wing bloviator sitting here in this chair and going, you shouldn't be near water. Should move to higher ground or not. Should be prepared. Nonsense like that. Because what I find interesting is the governor of Mississippi, Tate Reeves, he has reached out to the federal government. He has reached out to the federal government asking Joe Biden, sent a letter to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden has responded in the affirmative. They're going to send FEMA, they're going to send the Army Corps of Engineers, they're going to send, they're going to send everything. They're going to help because that's what Joe Biden does. You got to wonder, the former guy, if this would be political payback time. Which is why there's a part of me that goes, I couldn't be an elected official because I would remember a lot of stuff, but Biden sending the kitchen sink down there, and they need it. Understand, they do need this. But Tate Reeves is sent this letter to the president saying, hey, we need help. Please, we need federal assistance. We need money. We need a declaration of emergency. We need all this stuff. Send everything. Send the kitchen sink. Now, what I find interesting is earlier this month, this is the amazing part of this, just days ago, earlier in this month, same Governor Tate Reeves, returned about $100 million in federal rent aid that would have helped the poorest people in Mississippi, the elderly, the disabled, would have helped them afford their housing. Send it back, because we don't need no stinking, how did he put it? Experimental socialist program being pushed from Washington, D.C. We don't need none of that stinking stuff. But hey, federal government, send everything. And this is one of those moments where you go, not going to help others, won't help the poor, won't help the elderly, won't help the downtrodden, certainly not going to help others, but surely, oh my goodness, surely going to help himself. And this is what we call Christian. That's the part that I find most hysterical. Remember, these are the good God-fearing folk, the praying people, right? This is who these folks are. So when it benefits him, because understand, he's going to be the one going, look what I've done. I've fixed your water. Look what I've done. I've brought all these resources to help bring the water back. Oh, love me, re-elect me, make me something more. But when it came to helping poor people put a roof over their head, making sure granny's got a place to live, making sure the disabled get fair housing, oh, no, that's experimental socialism. Can't have that. It's incredible to me. Now, again, I come back to Joe Biden is a much better person than I am. And the people of Mississippi should be happy that President Biden is in office because he's not vindictive. He immediately sent FEMA, the EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, going to get clean, safe water to families. They're going to do what needs to be done. But here's my problem again. This is not unpredictable. This was not unexpected. Because if you read the stories, Jackson's had problems with water for years. This is not new. This is something that's been going on for decades. This has been a problem that's been there. It's just now caught national attention where Tate Reeves is going, uh-oh, somebody now notices. Now there's a chance for me to step in and look like I can get things done by using federal money. Socialist federal money. So the people of Pennsylvania and New York and California and Ohio and Michigan and all the other states can fund their cleanup. I understand they gave massive tax breaks away. They've basically given everything they can to the very wealthy. They don't fund education. They don't fund infrastructure. They basically mooch off the federal government while preaching individual. You're on your own a stand. It's amazing. Now, look, I look at this as one of these moments you go, look, Jackson, Mississippi, not alone. There are Jackson, Mississippis all over this country. Our water infrastructure horribly broken in cities across this country. The lead pipe situation in cities like Allentown, Flint, you go across this country, all over the place. We have massive numbers of water systems and sewer systems and infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt. And while Biden got the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill put through, we need much bigger. We need much $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. We need much chunkier. And I was saying it back then. In fact, the Army Corps of Engineers said, the American Society of Civil Engineers said we needed $4.8 trillion to get even nationwide. So 1.2, good start. And I understand there's a bill in Congress right now, H.R. 3339, that would create a $5 trillion national infrastructure bank that would finance projects, like water systems in places like Jackson, Mississippi, places like Allentown, Pennsylvania, that would help rebuild our infrastructure, places like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where when I used to work in town there, sinkhole capital of the world in my view. Every time you turned around, something was being swallowed up. Why? The infrastructure under the ground was crumbling under our feet. We got work to do, folks. Something seriously wrong because we're not getting it done. Let's quick go to the phones. We've got Kurt on line one. Kurt, how are we doing today?
Oh, thank you for taking my call, Rick. Hey, first of all, while Charlie Crist resigned his seat in the House today to run full-time for governor against death sentence, Alaska just voted for a Democratic member of Congress, so it kind of evens out tonight.
Yeah, she'll be in office until November, and then going to have to run again.
Right, but at least Sarah Palin won't be in there, so that's part of the, what do you want to call that, MAGA crowd of women, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and all these other crazies that are out there. But hey, you're talking about Jackson, Mississippi. Just think if Ohio were to elect Nan Whaley and Pennsylvania elected Josh Shapiro and we had Gretchen Whitmer and the governor of New York, just think of how the Midwest could utilize some of the Great Lakes with those governors and a Democratic House and Senate with a Democratic president. Just think how we could help utilize some of those fresh water in that region to help people get the water they need. But my thing is that governor down in Mississippi, Joe Biden and the Democrats need to say, like Joe Biden said in Pennsylvania yesterday, how not one Republican voted for this, not one Republican voted for that. We need to go out and tell these people not one Republican supported diddly boop when it came to your benefits and welfare as far as being able to live your life to the fullest, healthy, and whatever. But I'll tell you what, speaking of the environment, kind of makes Jimmy Carter and Al Gore look like saints now, doesn't it? We should have listened to them back in 77 and 92, with the solar energy and the global warming and everything. I mean, we laughed at Jimmy Carter and Al Gore, but my gosh, what they were saying, you can go back 25 and 45 years ago, and, what they said is absolutely on the mark of what we're living today. But how do you convince a Bible-thumping, end-of-times conservative who benefits from what the Democrats are doing? How do you convince them that those Democrats are doing what's right when they think this is end-of-times stuff?
Yeah, and they're hoping for that. I know people are hoping, and I tell them, you know what, if you're hoping for it, don't wait. Go. Leave the rest of us alone.
Exactly. Because, don't push your beliefs on me unless it's secular. Do not push your religious beliefs on me because, as far as I'm concerned, these are not end of times. And that's the problem. I think we have too many, especially as Malcolm Nance likes to call them, Titus. We have too many of these Titus people who believe in this end of days stuff, and therefore these politicians. I think there's a lot of politicians that either want them to think they believe it and don't, or maybe they do. I don't know, but it just really bothers me that we have these politicians that are kind of falling for what this Titus is wanting, this end of days stuff and this violence. So don't help the black people. The Jews are dangerous, and white Democrats, we need to go out and kill them, and blah blah blah. And it's a scary time. That's all I can say. And we just gotta. Who was it? Malcolm Nance said today. I heard him today on the radio say, we've got to get at least 25% more people, Democrats that is, out to vote than what we did in 2018 in order for this Congress to stay in the Democrats' hands.
And I would like to see that happen, and I want better Democrats. So I want working class Democrats. I want people who are going to move us in a better direction than we've been in the past. This is where, again, I want Democrats, but I want good ones.
But here's the thing, too. We as Democrats, while I agree with you that we need working class Democrats like Tim Ryan and John Fetterman and people like that, got to keep in mind, too, at this point, we as Democrats don't have the luxury for what I like to call the purity test, which is what people stayed home because, Bernie wasn't the nominee, I'm staying home, or whatever, because, God, I'm not going to have Hillary because she's not going to do this and she's not going to do. Well, look at what happened when you stayed home. Look at what you got because you stayed home. So I blame the Bernie bros more so than I do the Trump supporters at this point.
I blame them all. It's that simple. Appreciate the call, Kurt. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Look, at the end of this, it comes down to, I want Democrats to hold on to the House and Senate because we need to get stuff done. But I want working class voices there. I want people who understand what it's like to get their hands dirty. I want the people who know what it's like to come home after a long day and be tired and have to take a shower at the end of the day. Those are the folks I want there. I want to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this with your thoughts. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Thoughts, questions, comments, something on your mind, want to hear it. I've had a number of people reach out, ask, hey, there's all this talk of violence. 40% of the country thinks there's going to be a civil war in the next decade. Should I be concerned? Should I be worried? Should I be worried for my kids, my family? Should we stay home? And I'm like, no. My response has been simple. There's certainly going to be some knuckleheads out there. I believe this. There's the dim among us who truly internalize that they believe that they're the patriots watering the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants. And you know the rhetoric, that they've internalized this. It's who they've convinced themselves that they are. They're going to be out there committing, They're going to be out there committing atrocities. There will be some. But you're not going to see them marching in formation. I mean, I live, not far from a place where the militia has their little formations, and they do their little marching around, and and they do their thing. But you're not going to see them in the streets, I don't think. You're not going to see them, taking on the National Guard or the local police department. I just don't see it. But here's the thing, and this is the important part. The important part is good people cannot remain silent. Good people cannot cower in fear. Good people cannot stay home, because this is what they want. They want good people to cower, because this is how the terrorists will win. Remember that? Remember back during the 9/11 era? Because if the terrorists will win, if then anything, the terrorists will win. This is kind of one of those moments. If we don't stand up in this moment, the right-wing extremist terrorists will win. If we don't get out to vote in November and hold people accountable, the terrorists will win. If we don't go after people who crime, the terrorists will win. It seems pretty simple to me. It seems pretty simple. Let's go to the phones. Got Kurt on line 1. Kurt, how are we doing today?
Doing good out here in the West.
I got back-to-back Kurts. What's going on here?
So what I'd like to do is see if you're interested in doing this. We're working on a lot of stuff with the water issue in Arizona is one of the 7 states that
You're in
has
trouble.
to come up with a plan.
Yep.
We're in trouble, serious trouble. And what we're doing is we have started a phone banking program. We're talking to people in all 7 states. We have like a survey to kind of just get people educated on this. We learned in the primaries of phone banking for candidates that a lot of people don't understand this. And the media talks about it a little bit, but they talk about water cuts and the water shortage. There are so many things to this, Rick, that we got to talk about. Why I'm saying this and why I would like to do this is because a lot of our food is grown in Pinal County, which is the center part of Arizona. Pinal County provides a lot of produce during the wintertime for like you guys and in the whole country, and even wheat for places like Italy and other places. And food is going to be a huge issue.
Yep.
Right now, I was just in Pinal County at some of the farms. It takes, right now, this season, it takes 15 head of lettuce to get one. And it used to be a couple years ago, it only take like 6, because climate change is changing. The soil is changing. So what we want to do is...
So hold on, what do you mean? You've lost
group.
me here. It takes 15 head of lettuce to get 1 head of lettuce?
Yeah,
Explain
right
that.
now, from the farms out of Pinal County. So think about it, and it takes 6 gallons per head to get a head of lettuce.
Okay, so you're talking about water.
So you gotta
okay.
look. Right.
Now you get, because you said
And
15 head of lettuce to get 1 head of lettuce. So you're talking gallons of water. That much water to get a head of lettuce? Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe I
and
should stop
it's
eating
true,
lettuce.
Rick. The farmers they told me that they have to plant 15 to get 1. So when you go in the grocery store and you see 30 heads of lettuce, it's actually like it took 15 times 30 is...
Okay. Now I get
not
what you're
good.
saying. All right. Wow, that's a lot. That's a
So
lot of
there's
loss.
a lot. It's a lot of loss, and that's happening more and more. And so what we could do, what we want to have this series on is all these issues that are part of the Colorado River. What we'd like to do is do on a Saturday. We also have a corporate commission that we're trying to elect that's really good on these issues in a Arizona state attorney. And they are really good with environmental issues, the water issues. We're getting a lot of pushback from the Republicans. We have the lineup for the Republicans is really crazy here, Rick. It's just like
Arizona.
Pennsylvania, basically. So I'd like to see if you would like to do that. I'll
Yeah,
send you
email
some
me.
more information.
By all means, email me.
Okay.
I would love to find out more about it and see where we can work together on it. Absolutely.
Sounds good.
I appreciate
And,
it, man. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good stuff there. No, look, we got serious problems. We got serious water problems. And if you look at the heat wave coming across, I guess we're something like there's a triple dip coming. I'm being told that this is historic. We're seeing a lot of historic storms and a lot of historic things popping up that, the once every couple hundred years this or the once every couple hundred years that, just happening every couple of years. It's kind of frightening when you stop and think about it. But water is going to be that thing that we're going to fight over. And understand, as we've privatized and profitized water, you've got some of the biggest water companies in the world, like Nestle, who's be more than happy to sell it to you. I gotta wonder, down in Jackson, Mississippi, how much profit is being made off of that. We stopped investing in water systems. We stopped investing in that stuff only to ensure that corporate America gets their pockets lined. I remember back when the bottled water craze began, I'm going, why would you put water in bottles? You've got a perfectly good fountain. You've got a hose. My generation grew up drinking out of a freaking hose. It's quite remarkable that we're gonna buy water out of a bottle. But this is where we are. This is where we are. Let's go to Eric on line 3. Eric, how are we doing today?
Doing great. No, I wanted to add to what you were saying about the kind of Democrats we want. I mean, we call them 20th floor people. Wish we had, and trying to get more people that actually know what it's like to work for a living, not have to just collect interest on their money. So that's, just wanted to add that. But then I think now is a good time we can reorient people's misconceptions, let's say, because the irony and just the hypocrisy is so thick right now that it's time to point out, see, this is why they don't care about you. They don't like you. They claim to like you, but if they did, why didn't they ensure that the infrastructure is good? And this is basic conservative stuff, like from back in the 50s, that time that they want to go back to. Why don't they talk about the tax rate? Tax rate around the 50s was about 90%. I mean, go down the list. But they don't. It's a con. They're conning you, and just very politely, just, hey, look, take a look at this.
And
take a look at that.
Who are we talking about when you're saying they are conning you?
Oh, the Republicans.
Oh, okay.
So like Trump, I mean, especially, and then the sad thing is, it's somebody that they would see coming a mile away. His con coming a mile away, but then for whatever reason, because they either didn't, they got caught up in the hoopla, they just don't see it yet. But they do. They do with anybody else, right? And that's the one thing that's frustrating. We just got to kind of, chip it away at it bit by bit, because I live in a place where it's between, Trump country and then up here in northwest suburb of Minneapolis. See it all the time. And it's kind of funny when I would tell people that, hey, I didn't vote for Trump because I'm not a billionaire.
Right.
Well, what do you mean? Well, he doesn't know what the hell we need and want.
Exactly.
He's for his guys. So
no, this is where I come back to. I want people who know what it's like to put in an honest day's work. I appreciate the call, Eric. Thank you so much, though.
not sure thing.
By all means, call back again. I got to take a quick break here. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. That's where we'll be. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1864. That was the day the final battle of the Atlanta campaign began with the Battle of Jonesboro. The Union had been embroiled in a civil war with Confederate forces to end the slave labor system for 3.5 years. It had been a difficult summer. Battles were increasingly bloody, with casualties on both sides numbering into the tens of thousands. Criticisms intensified against key Union generals like Sherman and Grant. Pressure mounted against President Lincoln to end the war and withdraw the Emancipation Proclamation if necessary. General William T. Sherman mounted the Atlanta Atlanta campaign earlier that year in May. His forces scored a number of victories throughout the summer, but could not decisively defeat Confederate forces. By August, Northern morale was so low that the Republican National Committee deemed Lincoln unelectable. The Democratic National Convention, convening in Chicago, had declared the war a failure and planned to ride to victory over Lincoln in the November elections. But Lincoln's commitment to emancipation was unwavering, and Sherman did not disappoint. He understood that Atlanta was, as historian Eric Foner describes it, a key railroad hub and the communications and transportation center for the entire Southeast. Sherman's forces had been marching down from Chattanooga for most of the summer. Finally, they marched to the south of Atlanta to cut the last key rail line. And on this day, Union forces positioned themselves at the Flint River and at the Macon and Western Railroad. Over the next 2 days, they would successfully beat back multiple Confederate assaults, destroying the rail line and forcing Confederate forces to abandon Atlanta. The city was now fully under Union occupation.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Here's a hot topic for Labor Day: heat. It's been a hell of a hot summer, exploding the top off thermometers with triple-digit readings across the country. As we're learning, week after week of this debilitating heat intensifies wildfires, causes electric grids to fail, kills millions of wild animals, including fish, burns up crops, and concentrates toxic air. But there's another impact that draws little notice. Heat kills workers. Indeed, searing days of 95, 100, 110 degrees are killing and injuring more U.S. workers each year than all the floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes combined. Those toiling outdoors, including farm workers, roofers and carpenters, airport ground crews, landscapers, road and street repairers, letter carriers, and trash collectors, are in the direct line of fire for this invisible, insidious killer. But working indoors is no better if there's no AC, for metal and stone warehouses and manufacturing plants become ovens. Then, welcome to climate change. 20 of the last 21 years gave us the hottest temperatures on record. Unsurprisingly, the yearly number of worker heat deaths in that period doubled. Also, researchers have determined that extreme workplace heat is causing about 170,000 people a year to suffer injuries on the job. The impact of heat is poorly understood, even by workers. A sudden heat stroke is not the only worry, for rising body temperatures can quickly fuzz the mind, weaken muscles, numb concentration. So workers fall, their hands get caught in machinery, they touch the wrong wire, etc. This is Jim Hightower saying America's power elites literally don't feel the intensity of this heat. So the richest country in the history of the world continues to subject millions of its people to senseless suffering and death, not even talking about this embarrassment, much less stopping it.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I remember back on Inauguration Day 2017. I do. I remember it well because I remember predicting this is going to be the most corrupt administration in the history of the country by far. I remember saying that, and I said it multiple times, and I said it's going to blow people's mind away about how corrupt they're going to be. And ever since then, I've gone, I predicted this. I predicted it was going to be bad. No, I didn't predict it was going to be this bad. Did not predict the criming levels that we have seen. No idea. And look, anyone who tells you that they knew it was going to be this bad, lying. Seriously, no one could have predicted. No one predicted this. But I look at the latest truth that came out of the bankrupting Truth Social, where Trump is saying that the FBI, I guess, staged the strewn documents that are classified. Saying that he basically staged it so he would look sloppy. But I love how he finished it by saying that lucky that he declassified everything. And I'm going, is this an admission that you now have it? Because I remember a minute ago, you didn't have it. Now we admit you have it? Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the latest and where we are with the the myriad of stories and tales and fables, the litany of lies and mistruths and misdirections of the Golden Palace being invaded, I've asked our good friend Allison Gill to come shed some light on, well, all of the insanity. She is a fabulous podcaster and host of the Daily Beans, Mueller, She Wrote, and the owner of MSW Media, a place that we are part of as well, mswmedia.com. Allison, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, good to see you, Rick. It's been a minute.
So, let's start
It's been
with
like 9 crimes since we've talked.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to this, and I go back to that day, January 20th, 2017. I remember we had an all-star lineup of folks come on and talk about how bad it's going to be and start preparing folks, to get ready to, to be the resistance and do all this stuff to hold them accountable because criming was coming. No one could have imagined the amount of criming that's gone on.
We got a little bit of an inkling of it in watching the inauguration and watching learning that Michael Flynn was texting a business partner named Copson from the dais of the inaugural, trying to say, hey, we're free to go now. We can set up our nuclear reactors in Saudi Arabia and give them our technology. We don't have to worry about sanctions anymore. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And then Eric Prince can put all his guys to guard him. We can recolonize the whole Middle East. And eventually, the ultimate goal, I think, was for Saudi Arabia to be able to centrifuge some uranium. But in any case, I thought that was kind of spooky. And then, of course, about midway through, we found out that Jared Kushner was in the pocket of Mohammed Bonsa, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, and gave him a list of intel, Hume-int, traitors to the crown, which were summarily exiled, some executed. So we remember the first Oval Office meeting with Kislyak and Lavrov, where he gave them some Israeli intelligence. So we had some inkling early on that this kind of slapdash handling of classified information made him the greatest national security threat in the history of the United States. But yes, to see what was strewn about the floor there, pulled out of his desk, mixed in with his Big Mac wrappers and taco bowl shells to show that he really didn't hate the Mexicans. We saw this just a wide array of TK, SC, SI, SIC, HCSO, HCSP, like all of this very top secret, compartmental, code word classified, big bright red letters documents that they just weren't able to locate during that first subpoena. It is quite mind-blowing, not only to hear the DOJ talk about it in their recent filing, but to see them scramble with a clown car of lawyers to try to defend it.
Yeah, a clown car is right. I mean, because everyone seems to agree that the lawyers that Trump has probably not the best. And this is what you get when you find lawyers on park bench ads and 3 a.m. TV ads. In fact, I keep seeing people going, Trump's lawyers need to lawyer up because of their activities in all this, which is I guess fun too. I mean, for the entertainment value, there's some fun in this, but the serious part of this is real serious national security stuff that, as I'm reading the people who know, we have no idea what kind of damage this guy has done to our national security and to assets around the world, do we?
No, and that's just it. He's never had respect for the troops, for veterans, for Gold Star families, for law enforcement, particularly Capitol Police officers, FBI, military. And it's because he is incapable of understanding giving of oneself to something that is larger than oneself. And he's a completely transactional narcissist, which means, a lot of people want to know why he's taken these documents. There can be only 3 reasons. Either he's trying to hide something, or he's trying to trade for something, or he's trying to sell something. And that's it. That's the bottom line. He's completely transactional. And these lawyers talk about narcissism, that he picks them off of a central casting, So, they aren't the brightest bulbs in the shed. They aren't the best lawyers, but they look pretty. But they, and that's, 80% how you look, 20% how you sound, 10% what you say. And that's what he's got. And that's how, and other malignant narcissists are the only people that are going to associate with him. So all they care about is being seen and being heard, not what they say. And I think it's going to land him in a lot of hot water.
Yeah. Now you're someone who actually understands all this stuff. So when you rattle off all these letters and what all this security clearance stuff is, you understand it. I don't think the vast majority of people know what classifications are what, but I think all of us understand that if any of us had any of this material, we'd be not just in jail, but probably underneath it. So this argument that he's made that he's declassified everything, so he's allowed to have it, does this hold any water, do you think?
Well, I don't think so. There's a lot of evidence, like the totality of the evidence shows otherwise, because with all of the back and forth with the National Archives in 2021, and then the back and forth with the National Archives, FBI, and White House counsel this year, and then more back and forth with the head of espionage from the Department of Justice coming down to serve a subpoena, and then all of those interactions, never once did he or any of his lawyers say that this was all declassified, or that this was attorney-client privilege, or this is executive privilege, these are mine. None that was never asserted, and in fact he waited 2 weeks before he filed anything in this, and he filed something under Rule 41, which is federal criminal procedure, and the man hasn't been indicted. I guess he just can see the writing on the wall, but they don't know what they're doing, and as far as I can tell, he's just going to keep doing this until somebody stops him from doing it.
Yeah. So now I got to ask you about this request for a special master. Which, as I've been reading, and look, I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyers that I'm reading are saying, this probably wasn't the brightest idea. I'm curious your thoughts on the reasoning behind doing this, and is this is it him trying to sue to get this stuff back? What is it? What would make him pursue this other than just trying to cause chaos and make this look like, he declassified it, it's mine, I want it back kind of thought?
Well, about 12 days after the search warrant was executed at Mar-a-Lago, Christina Bobb appeared on the Ingram angle on Fox. And Laura Ingram kept pushing Christina Bobb. Why didn't you file to get your stuff back? Why haven't you filed an injunction to stop him from looking through the things? Why haven't you filed under attorney-client privilege, et cetera, et cetera? And Trump saw that, and he was very angry. So he got his lawyers together. We have to file something. We have to file it immediately. His lawyers were like, "What? For what? You haven't been charged with anything yet." And he said, "Let's do a special master." Cohen got a special master. My old lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, got a special master. Not, ignoring the fact that most of his ex-lawyers have either been in jail or about to be indicted. And so they filed for a special master. But the special master is usually for attorney-client privilege, and Donald's not a lawyer. And there was a privileged team on site during the search warrant, so it's moot. And the special master, their job is to go through the stuff and give back what isn't going to be used or can't be used by the Department of Justice in a criminal investigation or in a criminal charge. This is a civil case, so it's doubly doesn't make any sense. And triply, you can't get anything back that didn't belong to you in the first place. And the DOJ laid that out beautifully in their filing. And Trump's response is, "Well, I hate your face, and so no."
That's a perfect response. That is the Trumpian response. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Dr. Allison Gill, podcaster, host of the Daily Beans podcast. She's also the founder of the MSWmedia.com site, where you can find a bunch of fabulous podcasts, including ours. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. She's also the voice of the Mueller, She Wrote podcast, which I love as well. Now, here's the thing. Any chance he gets indicted? I know a lot of people are all itchy and hoping that Merrick Garland pulls the trigger and indicts him, because it's got to come soon, right? Because of the DOJ's policy about political stuff before an election, and we're coming up to some kind of deadline. I guess September 10th seems to be a deadline of some sorts. Any indictment coming soon, you think?
No, I don't think you're going to be able to gather all the evidence you need to gather by September 10th. They're going to need to bring in these lawyers who in this case aren't his lawyers. They're actually fact witnesses or co-conspirators, because a lot of people don't realize the Espionage Act, 18 U.S. Code 793, has a conspiracy element that you can charge. So these lawyers either need to say, we did it all. He didn't know anything, and take the brunt of a possible 20-year max sentence for obstruction of justice, just to name one of the 3 crimes mentioned in that warrant, or they need to flip. And in order to get their testimony, you've got to bring them in, you've got to question them, then you've got to bring them in front of a grand jury. They might have to impanel a new grand jury, and that's not going to be done in the next 10 days. So, plus, I don't think that Merrick Garland would play technicalities with the DOJ policy not to make any overt investigatory steps against not just a political candidate, because he's not a political candidate, but something that could impact negatively an election or a party. And he is the de facto head of the Republican Party. Do I agree with that policy? Not necessarily. I'm just reiterating it to you so that, to the listeners here, so that everybody knows what that policy is. But given what happened with Jim Comey and Hillary Clinton in 2016, announcing the reopening of the investigation into her emails, pursuant to the Weiner laptop discovery, and that's not a nickname, that's guy's
his name, Anthony Weiner. Yeah.
I think that they're going to err in the favor of caution when we talk about not wanting to have any political impact on any investigation at all. So if we see indictments for Trump out of this, they'll come after the election.
Yeah, and well, look, I want to make sure it's an airtight case, because there's talk, and you listen to Lindsey Graham, and you've heard the comment that if he's indicted and if he's prosecuted, there will be violence. And I don't know. Maybe a couple of dimwits, but I think as more information keeps coming out, the loud voices seem to be getting quieter. At least from my perspective, there doesn't seem to be as many defenders out there screaming like there had been.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you. I think it's going to be maybe some one-off idiots like the Cincinnati guy, or the guy who crashed his car into the Capitol stanchions and then caught on fire and shot himself in the face. I mean, there's 12 guys maybe hanging out front of Mar-a-Lago right now, which we call Nar-a-Lago, with giant flags. I think they use, how my cat, when he wants to seem fearsome, fluffs up his tail. I think MAGA guys carry giant flags to make themselves seem like a larger crowd than they are. I don't want to downplay the potential violence. We saw what happened on January 6th. But I think we're prepared for it now. And the deterrence from the 850 arrests, 350 guilty pleas, some jail sentences exceeding 5 years, coming up on one where they're asking for 17 and a half, the Oath Keepers trial coming up very soon. I think people are thinking twice about civil war. And you're right. I think a lot of the critics have been silenced, but it's still something that we need to keep our guard up for. It is still the number one threat. Domestic violent extremists is still the number one security threat here at home.
Yeah, I know one thing for certain. I know one absolute thing, that if there is violence in the streets, if the MAGA idiots are out there with their big flags and their guns and all that, I know Lindsey Graham will not be leading them.
No, and they will need an actual well-regulated militia.
There is that. So last question I've got for you, because I know a lot of my friends still believe that Trump's going to be indicted. I'm still on the. I was in camp never. I have now moved to camp maybe. Where are you?
Yeah, I was talking to Peter Strzok and I. We recorded the Daily Beans for tomorrow. We recorded it today, and he's moved from probably not to more likely than not, 51-49. I'm at about 75%, but we're also all just we're all very gaslit. We all have sort of an imposter syndrome that it's just never going to happen. I hope we're all proven exceedingly wrong, and there are mass indictments up and down, not just for the documents, but for January 6th for the fraudulent elector scheme down in Fulton County, Georgia, and federally. That maybe the Manhattan DA will pull something out of his hat last minute. Maybe we'll see it, and we've just been in a holding pattern. The truth is, justice is somewhere in the middle, and we just don't know where it is yet. He could make a deal. He could say, "I won't run again if you just let me go live my days out in Moscow," and he could get a Spiro Agnew deal. We don't know what justice is going to look like, but I think Merrick Garland has the guts. I know that Wyndham and the DC U.S. attorney have the guts, because they were willing to charge seditious conspiracy, and I didn't think they were going to do that. So we'll see.
We will see. But Allison, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great to see you.
Good seeing you again, our good friend, Dr. Allison Gill. Make sure you check out her podcast, the Daily Beans podcast. We'll get links out on social media. Also, Mueller, She Wrote. You can get that at mswmedia.com. We'll get links there as well. Going to take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1921. That was the day the Battle of Blair Mountain raged in Logan County, West Virginia. Members of the United Mine Workers of America were attempting to organize the minefields in the southern part of the state. The efforts to bring workers to union was met with violent resistance. The miners armed themselves and marched south. As many as 10,000 miners joined the march. They met armed company men at Blair Mountain. In the battle that ensued, 1 million rounds were fired. The mine owners even hired private planes to drop bombs on Union miners. The U.S. Army intervened and the battle ended. Despite not being successful in their march, the bloody battle brought national attention to the violence in the coal fields. But that was not the last battle for Blair Mountain. In 2011, there was a proposal to bring mountaintop removal mining to Blair Mountain. This type of mining blasts off large chunks of a mountain surface to get at the coal seams below. Protesters stood against the proposal. They argued it would be environmentally devastating to the area. They also argued that it would blast away one of the most important sites of labor history in the nation. Some coal miners took exception to the protests. In a CNN documentary on the conflict, one union miner said, quote, "Mountaintop removal is what built this house, sends that little girl to school, provides insurance for my wife." But another miner joined in the protest against removal. He told CNN that miners had been, quote, "brainwashed to think, oh, I can't have a job unless it's a mountaintop removal job." In 2014, the state prohibited surface mining at Blair Mountain. For now, but that is subject to change. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I remember going to Blair Mountain back in 2013 when we did our labor history tour. I just happened to be listening to the Labor History in 2 comments, which you can find at our website, thericksmithshow.com. If you want to hear, we've got a couple of years worth of Labor History in 2. You can listen to a whole bunch of them if you want. But the Blair Mountain was an interesting place. We had a guide take us to where the battle was, and it's 101 years ago. They just celebrated the 100th anniversary last year, and I really wanted to go. Sadly, I wasn't able to. But I remember, as we pulled up into the area, and it's literally in the middle of nowhere. It was like being dropped in the middle of a forest, because the coal companies have actually taken all of the infrastructure out. You would think that in a place where you had 10,000 striking miners who fired 1 million shots, where there was an infrastructure that that supported thousands of workers, there would be storefronts and houses and all kinds of stuff, and there weren't. It was all removed. Every brick, every sign, everything gone. Every building all gone. It was just all woods. And we stopped at what was just like this roadside gas station, and it was an abandoned gas station that we were able to stop and do some interviews at, and all of a sudden out of nowhere came like 40 people from every direction, all wearing their Friends of Coal T-shirts and their big hats and their belt buckles and their sidearms and wanting to know what the RV from New Jersey and the minivan from Pennsylvania were doing around them parts. And it was one of those moments where it got a little dicey. In fact, we sent my wife and kids down the road. You hightail it to the next town while I keep them occupied. And I remember walking up to the biggest guy who had the biggest gun with the biggest hat and the biggest belt buckle, and saying, "Okay, well, what are we going to do? This is what we're going to do. Why are we here?" And they say, "Well, we're out here doing roadside cleaning." And I remember my son, who was like 5 at the time, he's like, "Well, where are your bags?" Their grand plan thwarted by a 5-year-old. And as I stood there and talked to them, because if I'm going to die on the side of the road, I'm not going to back down. As I talked to them, it turns out that the guys who were there all worked for like Patriot Coal and these coal companies who at the time were literally screwing them out of their pensions and their health care. But they were out on the side of the road, ready to do battle with the strangers who were in town. And I was simply there to talk about the history of the mountain, and I explained that to them. We're here to talk about the Battle of Blair Mountain and the mountaintop removal and the stuff that this. And they were like, we're trying to save coal because it's all we have, and that kept coming up over and over again. It's all we've got. It's all we've got. And you stop and you think about it. If West Virginia, if the workers there had the ability to really share in the wealth that was taken out of the ground in West Virginia over the 100 years, over all those years of mining, West Virginia would be like the wealthiest state in the country. But how much of that wealth was extracted and put into the hands of a handful of people who left? And left the workers with a reasonable union job. They were able to make a decent living, but got black lung because of it. And I remember, the couple of years around that period, as the United Mine Workers were fighting to maintain their health care, the promise of health care that those miners were promised for, that they go down into those mines and they sacrifice their health and their body and all of that they'd be taken care of. And these companies wanted to rip that away. And I remember, talking to guys who were my age and younger, who are the bodies broken, wheezing and on oxygen, and their lives over basically, but still fighting for the coal companies. And it was this kind of weird Stockholm syndrome kind of thing that I'll never forget. It was really very twisted, and I spent a lot of time in West Virginia around those fights. Going to the mine worker rallies in Fairmont, West Virginia, and Charleston, and other spots. To support those miners. It's quite remarkable at how corporate America can divide working people and really just pit them against each other. And that's one of those moments for me where they were literally on the side of the road, armed, ready to do battle with a family on the side of the road, all because they were going to talk about history and would not sit down and talk with us. I asked them numerous times, come sit and tell your story. I'm open. Let's flip on the microphones. Let's talk about it. Still want them to. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Have you ever been in a situation like that? By all means, let me know. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Small green plants lined the bed of what used to be a frontier lake between Switzerland and France. It's existed for 12,000 years, but now it's relegated to just a small stream.
More than half of Europe mired in worst drought in centuries. Climate change action is way more popular than Americans realize. Plus,
a country famed for its oil resources, committed to going to sustainable mobility.
Saudi Arabia pushes to become a global electric vehicle leader.
Really?
Yes.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
There is no climate crisis. It is a hoax, and fossil fuels are a wonderful thing.
It is 2022, and that is Virginia Congressman Bob Good. Hey, Virginia voters, it's 2022. Can you please vote that guy the hell out of office? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, from heat and drought in the U.S. to heat and drought in China. Now we're back to heat and drought in Europe.
Yes, unfortunately, more than half of Europe is mired in drought. According to a new report from the European Commission, 64% of the continent is in severe or exceptional drought, the highest category, and it is the worst drought in at least 500 years, and likely more. The combination of record heat and drought has triggered water shortages across Europe and is contributing to a widespread increase in fire danger across the EU. Drought, heat, and fires are all worsened by man-made climate change.
Yep, they are.
Here in the U.S., new projections from NOAA hold a warning for coastal communities that are seeing flooding on sunny days at high tide.
You mean like Florida?
Yes.
Then I'm sure they'll ignore it.
NOAA's latest outlook predicts that sunny day flooding, which today occurs on average nationally about once every 2 months or so at any given spot, could hit as frequently as every other day by 2050. That's within the lifetime of a traditional 30-year mortgage originating today. New Jersey is crafting new regulations to restrict development in coastal flood zones based on future climate projections, not past flood data.
Good.
By 2150, sea levels in Jersey are projected to be 5 to 19 feet higher than today.
Don't tell Florida.
A disturbing new study finds that living near natural gas fracking wells increases the risk of childhood leukemia. Researchers at Yale School of Public Health found that children in Pennsylvania who grew up roughly within a mile of a fracking well are twice as likely as other young people to develop juvenile leukemia. But some good news. New modeling shows that Democrats' newly enacted landmark climate bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, will not only save consumers money and lower energy costs, but will also deliver massive benefits and cost savings for public health. By reducing fossil fuel air pollution, the law will prevent up to 4,500 premature deaths every year by 2030 and hundreds of thousands of asthma attacks, with the biggest gains in communities of color that are disproportionately burdened by industrial pollution.
Well, that is good news.
In other news, a new survey finds that climate action is far more popular than people in the U.S. realize.
Is it?
2/3 of Americans support government climate action, but everyone is underestimating how much other people support climate policies, incorrectly believing that their neighbors don't support action. The researchers found this false perception occurs across all states and demographic groups. Even Democrats don't know that climate policy is very popular.
And why don't Democrats even know that?
The researchers at Boston College partially link it to decades of right-wing media demonizing climate policy.
Go figure.
And it matters, because when people assume something isn't popular, they don't talk about it, leading to what the researchers called, quote, a spiral of silence that helps obscure the deep, widespread support for climate protection measures across the board.
Of course, they don't talk about it. They think others don't agree with them, and they're afraid to speak up about it.
Finally, big moves in electric vehicles. Saudi Arabia has launched a major initiative to become a big player in the global electric vehicle sector, investing billions to develop a domestic minerals mining industry and an EV manufacturing and processing supply chain for batteries and cars. Bloomberg News reports that the petro-state hopes other countries will swap out their dependence on Saudi oil for dependence on Saudi battery materials, a sector that China currently dominates.
chalk me up as dubious. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank-approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
New video up by the folks at the Lincoln Project that I absolutely love, and we're going to get it out on social media so folks can take a look at it. I screwed up and didn't download it, dummy. I will get it out, though. We will make sure that we get it out so folks can take a look at it. But the punchline, and I love this, is, because conservatives love to say how tough on crime they are. I love the fact that they point out that it's hard to be tough on crime when your party leader is a criminal. It's kind of hard to do that, and I think that's right. I think it's right when all of the criming that we're seeing and that you're defending. It's kind of hard to be the tough on crime people, especially as like I've been saying, Joe Biden's literally killing it. The legislation being passed, the economy turning around for working people, all pretty good stuff. And here to share some thoughts on where we are and where we're going, I've asked Reed Galen to come talk with us. Reed is the co-founder of the Lincoln Project. Reed, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me back, Rick.
So, again, I love the video. Love the idea that you guys are pushing. Look, the successes of the Biden administration are now the what were the talking points that the GOP had. They're shooting that down. Now we're going back to the old greatest hits, the fear and the smear and the crime and all of that stuff from the party of crime.
Yeah, look, they always go back to the greatest hits, right? Whether or not it's burning cities, dystopian future, right? The shadows, the long shadows falling over America. As we saw, when the Mar-a-Lago search first happened, earlier this month, remember they even went back to Hillary Clinton and locked her up. And so, this is where they go when they've run out of ideas. Well, listen, let's be clear, Rick, they've never had ideas. They don't have ideas. But I think it's also interesting that not only are they going back to their greatest hits, racist dog whistles will not be long for this world, won't be long behind. But also you can see a lot of these candidates across the country now are scrubbing their websites of abortion language, scrubbing their websites about inflation, scrubbing their websites about the 2020 election, because they realize that, Democratic voters are energized. Republican voters are probably a little bit downtrodden given everything. And independents now appear to be swinging toward the Democrats' favor. And so, look, when all else fails, Rick, they will always go back to fear.
Yeah. And look, fear sells. And sadly, some people are going to buy into it, and this is one of those moments where you can't fall for it, and need to be holding people accountable, especially in this moment where I go, there's a lot of criming going on. In fact, in the last hour, we talked with Dr. Allison Gill about the Trump crimes, which if you or I had any of these documents, we probably would be never heard from again, let alone 300 of them.
Right. No, look, I was lucky enough to work at the White House years ago, Rick, and I was lucky enough to work at FEMA and the Treasury Department, where I held a top secret clearance. And I cannot imagine ever having, taken those things, outside of the bill, the structure, the facility in which they were supposed to be, reviewed, let alone taking them home and just considering them mine. Now, even if you're the President of the United States, who can technically, quote, declassify anything he wants, there's even a process to that. But look, I think, Rick, you're making a broader point about the crime, which is one, Trump and the authoritarian semi-fascist or fascist movement, as President Biden called it, the only crimes they believe are those committed by their opponents and those of people they consider their enemies. They are not allowed to do wrong in their own minds. And then I think, secondly, all of the lying that accompanies that, we have to remember, Rick, it's not for you, it's not for me, it's not for most of your listeners probably. It's for the people that you and I were talking about right before we went on air, the guys that you were talking about right before we went on air, which is the whole movement, and this is a movement, Rick, must keep people inside a hermetically sealed bubble of fantasy and untruths and unreality, because that's the only way to keep them in line. Because as soon as the reality starts to break in, then the movement starts to degrade. And if that happens, then Donald Trump can't run again. The Doug Mastrianos of the world have no chance. The Kerry Lakes in Arizona have no chance. And so this is a very deliberate set of tactics that you're seeing from Republicans.
No, to make that point, I talked to a bunch of my union buddies who are all in favor of Doug Mastriano, and one of the things I say is, understand, the first day he's in office, the Republicans will pass a right-to-work law in this state faster than Kentucky ever imagined doing it. And they'll give Kentucky whiplash on how fast Pennsylvania will become a no-rights-at-work state. And that's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt your family. That's going to hurt everybody in this place. But they don't care because, well, he hates the same people that we hate. Seems to be the kind of mantra that I get in the response that I get back.
Well, and that also goes to what we were discussing, which is it has little to nothing to do about actual economics and everything to do about grievance, a revanchist attitude and a return to a world, frankly, Rick, that never existed, never existed in anybody's mind, but only in the sort of gauzy rearview mirror of history. And it's a reaction to what we've talked about, which is, I think, predominantly amongst a lot of working class white Americans, but I think also plenty of wealthy white Americans that have loss of status. That they see that the country is changing before their eyes. The social mores are changing before their eyes. People, Americans, with the exception now of women in this country, are as free. More Americans are free and have rights than they've ever had, again, with the notable exception of women following the Dobbs decision in too many states. And they don't like it. And Doug Mastriano, just like Donald Trump, represents someone who they don't care if he lies. They don't care if he does whatever it is he does, Rick. If he passes right to work, they'll blame it on you. They'll blame it on the unions. It was years of union overreach that caused us to have to do this. Remember, they're always the victims. They are never the instigators.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, now you are a Republican. I mean, are you still consider yourself a Republican, or are you a former Republican?
Former Republican.
Okay, as a former Republican, because the Republican Party used to be the party of personal responsibility, as I remember.
Sure.
The victim thing wasn't their mantra, but it seems like right now, every time you turn around, they are the victim. They're never responsible for anything. It's always someone else. It's like a 2-year-old. It's never their fault.
Well, it can't possibly be, because they're righteous and in the right all the time, and therefore anything that goes wrong is the fault of those people. And Rick, those people are the people who aren't in the in group, right? They're not in the know. They don't watch Fox or OANN every night. They're not on Facebook. They're not QAnon adherents. They're not Proud Boys, right? They're none of these things. They are you, me, and I would venture to say the vast majority of Americans, right? And we don't understand, or we're elites, or whatever we're suckers, whatever the case might be. But yeah, it's always going to be our fault. It's never going to be their fault.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're with Reed Galen, co-founder of the Lincoln Project. Check out their website, lincolnproject.us. We'll get links out on social media, how you can do that. Now, one of the things that I find interesting, and this is going on to what's happening in Jackson, Mississippi, and I want to get your thoughts on their governor there, Tate Reeves. I find it interesting that he's now asking the federal government for some help on helping with the water situation, while just days ago gave $100 million back that was supposed to help with the elderly and the poor with rent assistance and housing. So it's one of these things where, the good Christian people are going, no, we're not going to help the poor and the downtrodden and the needy, but, I need help, so by all means help me. This seems wrong.
Well, look, I mean, it's a travesty and a tragedy on many different levels. I think the fact that, this started in, the first major case of this, Rick, as you recall, was in Flint, Michigan. Jackson, Mississippi isn't the latest, and it won't be the last. American infrastructure has been allowed to lay fallow for decades, mostly because, Republican legislators, whether state-based or federal, didn't want to give more work to, the building trades, right? That was the reason, right? It wasn't because we didn't need bridges, roads, water infrastructure. But now what you're seeing here is that Reeves is faced with an infrastructure problem that has become a political problem for him. And I think this is the real key, Rick, is that it's only when it became what he thought of as an insurmountable political problem that he chose to make a decision he didn't want to make, right? And I think that if you look at, this whole idea of, what was Grover Norquist said, shrink government to the size where you can drown it in a bathtub, right? That doesn't create better life for individual Americans, individual Mississippians, right? What it creates is the capital of one of the 50 United States, right? In what is supposed to be the most advanced economy and the most advanced country in the world. And we now can't deliver fresh, clean water to its residents. I mean, it's unbelievable. Actually, it's not unbelievable, Rick. I'd like to say it's unbelievable, but it's not. And so I think that you see this, and this is an example, whether or not it's, vast cuts to public education, because, Rick, when they cut spending for education, they're taking on the teachers' unions, right? Whatever it is. I'm not a fan of all the things that teachers' unions have ever done, don't get me wrong. But I also know that an educated country is a much smarter and more successful country. And all of this is going to lead to more hardship, more worse outcomes for our kids, worse outcomes for our families. And it was Flint, Michigan, Jackson, Mississippi, Texas with its electric grid because Greg Abbott sold out to the utilities. They all do it for, ideological reasons that aren't based on a solution or public service, just because they think it's good with their base voters. And I think that, the Doug Mastrianos of the world and all these people who are running for governor will bring more of that, not less.
Yeah. So my question is, and this is where this gets for me, why aren't people outraged about what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi, and in Flint, in places where our infrastructure is crumbling after years of neglect and not investing in infrastructure, as much as they are in, hey, we're going to forgive 10 grand in student loan debt. Well, you may not be in favor of that. It may not be enough. It may be too much. But I see people literally losing their minds over helping these students who I think have been screwed over the last couple of decades. But not the same kind of outrage when you're looking at what is a very predictable situation in a place like Jackson. And as I understand, not new. This has been going on for years.
I think it's the difference between living in a town, 1,000 miles away from Jackson where you haven't had that issue, right? If you turn on the spigot and the water comes on, you're good, right? The student loan thing is, I think, a little bit different, and we saw some of this, when I traveled the country and talked to different groups, was that and it cut across demographics and it cut across parties, was the idea that, like, well, I paid for my college, I took out loans, or I didn't take out loans because I didn't want to be in debt. But I think and also, Rick, as you know, most of the country does not go to college. And for many years, I think also in a mistaken way, we told too many Americans, if you don't go to college, you can't be successful, right? That without a 4-year degree, the American dream wasn't going to be possible for you. And so I think there were a lot of people who maybe didn't need to go to college for whatever they want to do. They've been saddled with this stuff. Now, I think that the president politically made the best decision he could, which is he had a caucus screaming for him to forgive every last bit of it, which was not going to work. And, he knew he was going to get trouble from the right if he said, he was going to get trouble get in trouble if he did nothing as well. So, this was, I think, a place where he could find a way to begin solving a problem. And remember, as you know, Rick, none of this stuff gets solved overnight. But I think he started to contend with an issue. But your broader point is right, which is, how is it that you're going to a 4-year college and you're racking up $600,000 or $700,000 or whatever it is in college debt? That seems ridiculous. And I think that also goes to a whole system that's been set up, as you said, over decades, which only, puts the American individual citizen, the college student, their families or whatever, behind the 8 ball on this stuff, when the truth is that college educations should, there is a cost to them, there's no question about that, but it's exploded in cost over the past 20, 30 years, and that's ridiculous as well.
And the reason that I believe it's exploded, and we could argue for days on this, is because states and the tax base has walked away from it. I know here in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, the tax base in the 80s picked up about 2/3 of the cost of tuition. The students picked up about 1/3. Today, that number is the student picks up 3/4. The tax base picks up about 1/4. That's the reason. This is the reason that I support it, because we've walked away from higher education. We've saddled a generation with the kids with this debt. And by the way, we've made truck drivers and people who do jobs that need licensing. We've made them go get educations, whereas employers used to train people in the past to do those jobs. I learned to drive a truck because my employer said, "Hey, I need a truck driver. You want to learn?" And that's how I learned. I didn't have to go to school and take out a loan. We've completely screwed a generation by saying, "Hey, you got to take out a loan to get a chance to work your way into the middle class." I just see this as a small step in a right direction, but there are so many things we should be doing. Last question I've got for you. Election time just around the corner, coming up near.
Right.
Any predictions on how this is going to play out? I know at the beginning everyone's saying red wave. Now it's going kind of the other way. How you seeing this pendulum playing out over the next couple of months as we move towards, I guess, what's being called Rovember?
Well, I am famously awful at making predictions, and given that I'm just superstitious enough that if I say something out loud, I'll jinx it. I will say that I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that the arrows are pointing up, both for President Biden and for Democratic candidates, and I think some of those things are aligned. I think some of them aren't. I think you're right. I think the Dobbs decision is, for Republicans, is a little bit of the dog caught the car, which is you're seeing a lot of situations now in which, whether or not it's the 10-year-old girl in Ohio or women with ectopic pregnancies, or I think it was down in Louisiana where a woman's child was born without a skull, Rick, and they said she was going to have to carry it to term, even though there was no chance of this child living outside the womb. And so what's happening now is the inflexibility of so many of these Republican legislatures and governors to rush to get these things done is now boomeranging on them, and just to say, this is why Republicans, especially conservatives, have always been so hot on making sure the judiciary in this country was as conservative as it could be, was because they know in their hearts, Rick, and in their minds, that what they believe is broadly unpopular with the American people. So they needed to enshrine it with unelected judges, Rick. How long did we hear that?
Activist judges.
Right.
Reed, I appreciate the time. Always great talk with you. I hope you'll come back and share some more thoughts with us down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Reed Galen. Make sure you check out the work that they do over at the Lincoln Project. LincolnProject.us, the website. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. For working people on the talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I love this story coming out of Texas. Yes, Texas. Evidently, In God we trust can only be specific. Can't be only a certain in God we trust can we possibly trust. Evidently, someone went to a school board meeting in the city of Southlake, I guess in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they had a sign, because evidently in Texas now the law is in public schools you can now display "In God We Trust" signs. Yeah, religion in schools, because we passed a law. So these people said, hey, let's put "In God We Trust" on a rainbow flag, and let's put it in Arabic, because they believe in God too. Those were both denied, because not the right God, and not a straight God, evidently. At least that's the way it is, because they weren't even entertained. The person who was the president of the board, Cameron Bryan, didn't take up the question, saying that they had accepted all the ones that they're going to take. They have all the signs they need and all the 11 campuses and the office building. Sorry, no more. And this makes you go, what? Only approved God signs now? Where are we going with this? And the reality is that's who these people are. It's about power and control, and it's about indoctrination. Remember, anytime a conservative points their finger at you, whatever it is that they're pointing their finger at you, they're doing in triplicate. They're indoctrinating the children in school, because it's what they're trying to do. By all means. I look at my state rep. Her only claim to fame in passing any legislation is getting substitute teachers to be able to go into the classroom without any credential whatsoever, without any qualification, and making them spies, so they can spy on the public school teachers to make sure that they're not indoctrinating those kids. And then, evidently setting up a ring of reporting back, or whatever the craziness is that they've done. Because they've got it in their head. Because, again, it's what they would do. I always find it amazing. It's whatever comes out of their mouth is what they would do. They're indoctrinating our children. Yeah, because it's what they're trying to do. It's what they want to do. It's what they would do. It's the criming that they would commit. So am I surprised that the folks in Texas? No, not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. Also, Michigan. Bunch of people got together and said, hey, we'd like to get the abortion issue on the ballot. The folks gathered 750,000 signatures to get an initiative on the ballot so that people would have the right to vote on making sure that women had access to reproductive care. They only needed 425,000 to get on the ballot. They almost doubled what they needed. But the Republicans on the state board of canvassers says, no, we're not going to let you do that. Sorry. Now, why I find this amazing is, now remember, what the cons told us is that this was going to revert back to the states, and we're going to let the states battle it out, and citizens would have the right to decide. You remember that? Remember how we were going to decide it's going to go back to the states, and citizens would be able to be empowered, and we were going to vote on it? And no, that's not what's going to happen. They're going to use their power and control to impose their will. And understand, they're lying to us at every turn about caring about women and lives and anything. I look at Dr. Oz, who now evidently the Daily Beast has obtained audio from a campaign event back in May, where he said that, in private, the most extreme position, no abortion ever, for any reason whatsoever, zip, nothing. Sorry, honey, if your life's in danger, better luck next time. He said that it's murder including the moment of conception. So I've been saying this for a long time. Men, start worrying. Start worrying, because they're going to come for you next. The little swimmers, every swimmer is sacred. Go watch Monty Python. That simple. These people are crazy. Republicans hate working people. Remember that. Spread it. Pass that on. Republicans hate working people. And it shows out in every policy and everything they do. That simple. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, podcast. Grab the podcast, share it with your friends, and let them find out and share what they think. Quick break, right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1921. That was the day the Battle of Blair Mountain raged in Logan County, West Virginia. Members of the United Mine Workers of America were attempting to organize the minefields in the southern part of the state. The efforts to bring workers to union was met with violent resistance. The miners armed themselves and marched south. As many as 10,000 miners joined the march. They met armed company men at Blair Mountain. In the battle that ensued, 1 million rounds were fired. The mine owners even hired private planes to drop bombs on Union miners. The U.S. Army intervened and the battle ended. Despite not being successful in their march, the bloody battle brought national attention to the violence in the coal fields. But that was not the last battle for Blair Mountain. In 2011, there was a proposal to bring mountaintop removal mining to Blair Mountain. This type of mining blasts off large chunks of a mountain surface to get at the coal seams below. Protesters stood against the proposal. They argued it would be environmentally devastating to the area. They also argued that it would blast away one of the most important sites of labor history in the nation. Some coal miners took exception to the protests. In a CNN documentary on the conflict, one union miner said, quote, "Mountaintop removal is what built this house, sends that little girl to school, provides insurance for my wife." But another miner joined in the protest against removal. He told CNN that miners had been, quote, "brainwashed to think, oh, I can't have a job unless it's a mountaintop removal job." In 2014, the state prohibited surface mining at Blair Mountain. For now, but that is subject to change. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Here's a hot topic for Labor Day: heat. It's been a hell of a hot summer, exploding the top off thermometers with triple-digit readings across the country. As we're learning, week after week of this debilitating heat intensifies wildfires, causes electric grids to fail, kills millions of wild animals, including fish, burns up crops, and concentrates toxic air. But there's another impact that draws little notice. Heat kills workers. Indeed, searing days of 95, 100, 110 degrees are killing and injuring more U.S. workers each year than all the floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes combined. Those toiling outdoors, including farm workers, roofers and carpenters, airport ground crews, landscapers, road and street repairers, letter carriers, and trash collectors, are in the direct line of fire for this invisible, insidious killer. But working indoors is no better if there's no AC, for metal and stone warehouses and manufacturing plants become ovens. Then, welcome to climate change. 20 of the last 21 years gave us the hottest temperatures on record. Unsurprisingly, the yearly number of worker heat deaths in that period doubled. Also, researchers have determined that extreme workplace heat is causing about 170,000 people a year to suffer injuries on the job. The impact of heat is poorly understood, even by workers. A sudden heat stroke is not the only worry, for rising body temperatures can quickly fuzz the mind, weaken muscles, numb concentration. So workers fall, their hands get caught in machinery, they touch the wrong wire, etc. This is Jim Hightower saying America's power elites literally don't feel the intensity of this heat. So the richest country in the history of the world continues to subject millions of its people to senseless suffering and death, not even talking about this embarrassment, much less stopping it. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So yesterday, you had hundreds of University of Minnesota service workers out in the streets demanding better wages, hours, conditions under the banner of Teamsters Local 320 out in Minnesota. And here to share some thoughts on why you had the workers out there, now Teamsters Local 320 represents some 1,500 University of Minnesota workers who clean buildings, service dormitories, maintain the grounds, prepare food, maintain the air conditioning and heating systems. Basically keep the thing running. The important people, only to be paid poverty wages and treated horribly. And you kind of wonder why they're out in the streets. But here to share some thoughts on why they're out there and what the demands are, I've asked Hannah Bernardson to come talk with us. Hannah is a business agent with Teamsters Local 320 there in Minnesota. Their website, teamsterslocal320.org. Hannah, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Rick.
So, for school just beginning, the push to make awareness. Tell me what happened yesterday.
Yes, that's absolutely just it. What we were trying to do yesterday is just educate the public, the incoming students, and the parents about how the University of Minnesota is treating their workforce. So that's what we did. We took it to the streets yesterday. It was move-in week, move-in day, and that's what we were out there doing, just raising awareness.
So walk me through what the conditions are. Obviously there's a reason you guys are out in the streets. What's going on? What are the conditions there on the ground?
Yeah, like you had mentioned, we have around 1,500 service workers, and they basically keep the place running. They were the guinea pigs throughout COVID. We were there day in and day out. We didn't have any opportunity to work from home. Right now, a majority of our workforce, they are struggling to meet just basic monthly expenses. The people that they have left right now, they have been long-term employees. They are very invested. They care about the future of the school. So they're trying to make the place better. However, it's getting difficult for them to continue working there with the wages.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they're able to keep the university is able to keep people, and I'm sure the turnover is high, and I'm sure that because we've seen this movie play out all across the country, especially when you're talking about places that seem to operate on poverty wage structures.
Yes, absolutely, and part of the issue too is like I was saying, they can't hire people, they can't retain people. They have, as of last week, they had 204 open union positions in dining services alone. They cannot hire people, and their fix to it is to be able to hire people in off the streets at a higher wage than people who have been there for years and years and years. And so really what they need to do is just kind of reevaluate how they're treating their current workforce and realize that the people that they have left here, they're only left because they care about the students, they care about the university as a whole, and they care about the state of Minnesota.
Yeah. So how do you walk me through the thought process there? And I'm sure you clearly don't know what they're thinking, but what's the thought process that you're going to pay people coming in off the street more than the loyal people who have been there year after year, who you called heroes, who you called essential? How's that supposed to work?
Rick, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea. And, I don't think that they know what they're doing, hence the reason why their operations are failing. It's mind boggling. I don't understand it either. To me, it's pretty clear. I feel like it's a form of union busting. I feel like they want, unrepresented labor across the whole university.
And that means even more exploitable, even lower wages, even worse treatment. Because I understand, sexual harassment, discrimination, all of this stuff, part of the culture there, right?
Yeah, correct. It's deeply embedded there, and that's one of the things that we're trying to change. And a lot of people say too, they're like, well, hey, why can't these people just go find new jobs? Well, they can. But the thing about it is we want to make the change for the university. We want to make the change for the students. That's the only reason why we're doing what we're doing.
That's one of the things that's always driven me crazy. I've had people say, well, if you don't like the conditions where you're at, leave. And I'm going, no, you make them better. Even if you're only a short timer, even if you're only going to be there a couple of months, leave something better behind for someone else. When did this kind of thinking, it's horrible, so I'm going to leave it for someone else to be treated just as badly. When did that permeate our thought process?
Yeah, I don't know. That's not in my thought process. That's definitely not in my thought process. So,
So as I understand, yesterday you had a bunch of obviously a bunch of workers out there. You had a bunch of students, a bunch of environmental groups, some politicians came out. It was kind of a big deal, huh?
I mean, I would say so. Yeah, we had a decent sized turnout. It's one of the things that we've been practicing for. You know, we've been boots on the ground organizing. I think we had a decent turnout. Yeah, we had a few hundred people there.
So what kind of response did you get from the community as a whole? I mean, you know, anytime you do something like this, obviously you're going to get some kind of response. What kind of response did you get?
Well, you know, we got a mixture, right? You know, you have some people who don't really believe in unions, so they got a little bit irritated. But after a simple conversation of, hey, this is why we're here. We take care of students, your children. We make sure that their experience here is amazing. So after we kind of explained what was going on and just letting them know, like, hey, look, we're not here just to make your life a headache or to be in the way. We're here to fix things for your child, for the students, and for everybody that's involved. So after we kind of explained things, the audience or the public or what have you, I mean, they kind of got turned around a little bit. So they were very understanding. Lots
And that's
of
why
support.
Clearly this is why you do these informational pickets, to educate people, correct?
Absolutely. That's the main reason. You know, we don't want people to be scared of us. We don't want people to think that we're just out here being rebellious or disruptive. You know, we want to raise awareness. We want people to know that, hey, look, we are trying as hard as we can to stay employed here to make sure that this place gets better. However, like I said, it's getting difficult. You know, we got people that can go right down the street. They can make $15-20 an hour, you know, flipping burgers. And so I just think that, you know, these are real careers here. People are very invested, and it's time to start taking them seriously.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Hannah Bernardson. She's a business agent with Teamsters Local 320 in Minnesota. Their website, teamsterslocal320.org. If you want to check out the work that they do, you can also find them on Facebook and Twitter. All those, we'll get links out on social media you can take a look at. And they've got some pictures from the picket where you can get some information there as well. Now, you said that, you know, these are careers. These are jobs that people should be able to make a living on. You know, we hear a lot of, when you're talking about low wage work, we hear a lot of people, you know, say, well, these are temporary jobs, like in the fast food. These are just for kids. These are starter jobs. And I'm sorry, I think every job should come with dignity and respect, and that should be a wage that someone can live on with some bit of health security, retirement security, and dignity in the work that they do. We used to treat people who worked for a living well. We don't seem to do that anymore.
I would agree with you 100%, you know, which is the sole reason why I continue to stay in the role that I'm employed in, is because this is so important to maintain checks and balances and to make sure, you know, people get treated fairly. They can work one job, be able to spend time with their family, put in, you know, 8 hours worth of work and be able to make it.
Wow, there's a novel concept, something that's kind of gone off to the wayside. You know, an 8-hour day to support a family. Maybe one wage earner, maybe just one. Wow, there's a blowback to the past.
Yeah, that's what we got to keep pushing for, Rick.
Now, going back
we can get it done. We can get it done. Everybody. Yeah, go ahead.
No, and going back to your members, you know, the some 1,500 workers who make this university what it is, who keep it moving, who keep it functioning, who keep it beautiful, who keep people fed, who keep things clean. And I mean, you could just go on and on about what your members do, and I'm sure you can and do. But, you know, understand their working conditions. And this is where I think one of the main education points for the parents bringing their kids to the school are their working conditions are your students' learning conditions. So if things are terrible, if things are broken down, if things aren't working, your kids are living in that. So I don't know why you would be opposed to it.
Yeah, and I mean, tuition just keeps going up higher and higher and higher, you know? And so the tuition keeps going up, the parents are paying for it or the students are paying for it, and they get, for lack of better words, well, they get a terrible experience, you know? So it's like, I would be very upset if I was attending the university, if I had a loved one attending the university. Absolutely.
So let me ask you this, Hannah, because the reality is you had this day, you got some attention. Where do you go from here? What are the demands? How are you gonna push this forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think really the membership just has kind of been speaking for itself. I mean, they're tired. They're at their breaking point. We have mediation coming up here on September 8th and 9th. That's a Thursday and Friday. We plan this picket to hopefully be able to shine some sort of light and be able to get the university to move a little bit, to come a little bit closer to try to meet the demands. Otherwise, it's, I mean, we don't want to do it, but I mean, sometimes we have to have a work stoppage. That's obviously the last route that we want to go. However, that is what we are preparing for. So
no, at some point,
kind of where we're at.
The last arrow in the quiver, Hannah, is you got to go on strike. That the only power working people have and have ever had is the right to fold their arms and march their feet. That's it. To stop working. That's the only real power that workers really have ultimately. And hate using it. Look, I've been on strike in the past, hated doing it, but sometimes you don't have a choice. Like I said, it's the last arrow in the quiver. I hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, I wish you guys the best, and one day longer, one day stronger, because ultimately together, united as a country, and this is where I'm thrilled to see the approval rating for unions through the roof at this moment, that I think people are finally starting to get it. Only together are we going to move this economy in a way that's going to benefit workers and not solely benefit the Wall Street crowd.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better.
So for our listeners in Minneapolis, they're on KTNF AM 950 who are in the area, what do you want them to do? What's the request for our folks in your listening area?
I guess it would be to just turn up. I mean, show up to things. If you see us outside, honk, maybe stop, ask a little bit about what's been going on. We have different petitions that we have floating around. Some are on doing call-ins to President Joan Gable. So, I mean, really just anything for support. And I guess the one thing that I just want to leave with everybody would be to, just keep an open mind about this. When you see people outside, instead of, getting frustrated because it's slowing you down from getting somewhere, maybe just ask, hey, what's going on? Ask before you form opinions about unions.
No, but see, I got a whole different line of thought on that. You jump in line with them, you walk with a mile in their shoes, and then you understand where they're coming from. That's a whole different thing. Maybe bring some donuts and a pizza or something. Bring something to help.
Hey.
Be helpful.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that 100%. But some people, they're just not to that point yet. Some people just flick you off and keep going. Yeah. So if those people could roll the window down and say, hey, what's going on? That would be a step in the right direction for me.
Anna, I appreciate the time. Keep up the great work. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks so much, Hannah Bernardson. She is the Teamsters Local 320 business agent. Check out their website, teamsterslocal320.org. We'll get links out on social media. I can check that out. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people on the top. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. 3,500 buses rolled into Washington, D.C. They were loaded with protesters, there to participate in Solidarity Day. The AFL-CIO organized the event to coincide with the Labor Day weekend. They issued a statement, Why We March, outlining labor's demands. The purpose of the day was to bring attention to the concerns of the nation's working people, especially over health care. Other reasons for the march included a call for more public works programs. Another major demand was the end to permanent replacement of striking workers by scabs. Bernie Dinkin, Secretary-Treasurer of the Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union in Philadelphia, explained, One of the main purposes for us going down is to let
let our friends know, our friends in the Democratic Party who are sitting on their laurels, that if they do not support anti-scab legislation, we will vote against them, no matter what they've done in the past. The most important aim of the event was to show worker strength and solidarity. A similar showing of solidarity had taken place in the nation's capital 10 years before. After President Reagan fired striking air traffic controllers, a September 1981 rally had drawn more than 250,000 people. The 1991 action brought out similar numbers. Despite the 95-degree weather, tens of thousands converged on the nation's capital. They came from across the nation and 30 countries. 100 buses and a specially chartered train made the trip from Philadelphia. Noticeable among the crowd were members of the United Steelworkers Union with their gold and blue shirts. 180 different labor, religious, and civil rights groups stood up on that day for the rights of working people.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Let me go back to that for a second. The idea that, because we haven't been a strike society in a very long time. Look, I caught a portion of it early in my life. There were some in the 80s. When I was on strike, it was early 90s. And it was because you had no choice. This was one of those moments where you go, you've been pushed into a corner. There's no choice. And real quick, how it worked out for us is the company that I worked for, the group of companies that were negotiating the contract with the union said we want part-time workers. We want all of the dock workers to be part-time, and we're gonna pay them part-time wages. We're gonna bring them in for 4 hours. We're gonna work them. But what we'll do is all the full-time dock workers, we'll red circle them. They will be fine until the end of their career. They're gonna have jobs, but we're gonna replace as they leave. We're going to replace them with all part-timers. So we're going to take what were good family-sustaining jobs. We're going to take what were good middle-class family-sustaining jobs, and we're going to turn them into part-time employment with fewer benefits and fewer opportunities and all of that. And through attrition, we're going to destroy what was built by a previous generation. And we said no, that's not how that's going to happen. And in 1994, we went on strike nationwide to say no part-time dock workers. In fact, there are still full-time dock workers. Every dock worker that works in these companies are full-time with health care, with retirement security, with job security, all of that, with full employment rights. And it took everyone standing together saying, no, that's not what we're going to allow to happen to our industry, to our careers. And it's that kind of power that has to be exerted across industries. And look, what we're seeing right now, and we're seeing a lot of organizing going on. Starbucks is organizing, Amazon's organizing, REI's organizing, Apple's organizing, everybody's organizing, everybody's winning elections, everyone's having big celebrations, and that's fabulous. It is great to see this energy around organizing, this energy around, yes, we're going to join and form unions. It's amazing to see. No contracts yet. At some point, going to have to fight the battles of the past. And labor's history is a rich, bloody history of people demanding recognition, of people demanding that first contract. And that's the battle. And saying, look, we're going to shut things down. We're going to make life uncomfortable for a bit. And this is where, as a working class, and this is where I go back to, if I see a picket line, I jump on it. I go and I walk with those people and I talk to them and I go, hey, what's going on? Why are you out here? What made you cross that threshold? To say, yeah, I'm going to put my entire life on the line. I'm going to put the livelihood of my family on the line. I'm going to put everything, I'm going to put it all on the line to cross that threshold, to walk out onto that picket line, knowing that I may not come back. This may be the end. but I'm fighting for something. I'm fighting for better opportunities for myself, for future generations. In 94, when we were on strike, we knew what we were fighting for. We were fighting for the unborn. We were fighting for the generation that was coming after us. The people who have those jobs right now. And you go, well, unions are just selfish. No, they're not. They were thinking about the next generation in that moment, saying, no, we can't have this. And in places where it did happen, where they were able to divide. Two-tier wage systems are a perfect example of how the employer were able to get workers and unions to split themselves in half and screw the future generations. And we've learned from that and undoing it. This is why, as a society, we have to come back together and say that organizing, collective bargaining, that people joining and forming unions is good for society. It's good for the economy. It's good for the working class. Now, is it the best thing in the world for the Wall Street folks? No, because it means less profit for them. It means less in their pockets. But ultimately, what it does mean is it means a more robust economy. It means more workers with more money in their pocket to spend, so Wall Street can figure out how to get it. This is kind of how this game worked in the old days. So for me, when I see a picket line, I want to join it. I want to walk with those folks because I know the courage it takes. I know the courage it takes to step up and to speak out. I know the courage it takes to say, I'm not going to work for poverty wages, and I'm not going to just go somewhere else. Because here's the problem with that. Just go somewhere else if you don't like it. Everywhere else, especially in certain industries, acts just the same. In the race to the bottom, you're still at the bottom. If one employer is getting away with it, another is going to have to do it to compete. That's how this game works, which is why what happened out in California, I think, is a good thing. And I hope Governor Newsom signs the bill, and I hope they begin the commission to help fast food workers have a floor under their feet so they get decent wages, hours, conditions, so they get sane scheduling, so they get good treatment, so that they can produce a wonderful product that the employers, the franchisees, the people who own the businesses can make a good profit off of, and the consumers can get what they want and need and expect. Without there being people living in homeless shelters to provide them with their meals. We're a better society than that. I know we are. I know we are. Or I know we can be. So the next time you see a picket line, take a couple of minutes. Walk with those people. Ask questions. I've been on picket lines where people have just, flipped the bird. Oh, you're lazy. No, okay. Yeah, you know. But you'll gladly take the benefits that I'm fighting for. You'll gladly take the health insurance. You'll gladly take the retirement security. You'll gladly take the increase in wages. Because what we know hands down is that union employees make higher wages, have better health care, have better retirement security. And what we also know hands down is by them having that better health care and that better retirement and those better wages, it pulls the other sector up because, guess what? Turns out, when the non-union employers, don't want their workers to bring a union in, they do pay a little bit better. Not anywhere near, but a little bit better. And then they go on you don't have to pay dues. See how lucky you are? And I say this all the time. I wish I could take all my money and get the kind of return on investment I get out of my dues dollars. You never hear anyone say that, do you? I wish I could get the kind of return that I get for my $65 a month. I wish I could get that kind of return on every dollar I have. I'd be a very, very wealthy man. So for me in this moment, good on the folks there in Minnesota. I wish them the best. If you see them out on the picket line again, get out there and walk with them, stand with them, talk to them, stand up for them. Because you know what? While you're making their lives better, you could possibly be making your life better as well. That rising tide thing that they used to talk about, with the boats and all that. Yeah, could be a boat that you're in. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.